Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Depths of Hell. Slade evaded another swing from the Guardian by ducking down, the burly behemoth slicing cleanly through a heavy stone slab. Ducking to the side to avoid another swing, Slade slid to a halt with one hand on the ground. Chuckling in his throat, Orochimaru then jumped onto the Guardian's back and stabbed his twin-wind scimitar into his back. Grunting in pain, the Guardian stumbled back and Orochimaru grunted as his own back impacted with the wall behind him, yet continued to hold on. Seeing a chance to strike, Slade lunged at the Guardian only for the behemoth to grab hold of him by his entire torso with one hand. Slamming Slade into the ground, the Guardian reared his other arm back and conjured flames over the edge of his double-sided war axe. However, before he could do any damage, Orochimaru sent a snake out from his left sleeve that bit into his arm, holding the axe back as a grin worked its way across the Serpentine Man's features. Ku. I do believe I'm beginning to see why Naruto-kun enjoys this world so much. It has so many interesting opponents. Orochimaru mused aloud and then moved one leg up and yanked back on the snake biting into the Guardian's arm. Seeing his chance, Slade moved his own legs up and propped them against the Guardian's torso. Grunting from exertion, the masked madman then threw the behemoth into the air and towards the pools of lava nearby. Smirking to himself, Orochimaru then flipped off of the Guardian and landed next to the masked madman. Smirking slightly, the serpent-eyed man offered a hand to Slade before helping him back to his feet, only for them both to look to the side as the behemoth crawled out of the lava, completely unharmed by it. Oh good, I was so hoping that wasn't the full extent of its powers. Orochimaru noted while Slade backed away and began trying to catch his breath, the serpent-eyed man cracking his neck and grinning. After all, I've only just begun to have my fun, Orochimaru declared before lunging at the behemoth, and quickly dodged a swing from its battle axe. Twisting around with unreal grace, Orochimaru then slammed his legs into the Guardian's side, propelling him to the side where he fell and skidded against the ground before coming to his final stop. Wretched soul, like all other mortals, you cannot escape your ultimate fate, the Guardian declared while using its axe to rise back to his feet, an amused grin splitting Orochimaru's lips at the declaration. Perhaps, or perhaps not, either way, it will take far more than the likes of you to put me in my grave, Orochimaru stated while marching towards the Guardian, dodging and weaving around several swings of his axe. Stopping in front of the behemoth, Orochimaru then slammed a fist into its helmeted head, causing it to stumble back, a series of spider-webbed cracks forming on the surface of its helm. Shaking his hand from the minor amount of pain of punching the steel helm, Orochimaru then threw his arms back before throwing them forward. As soon as he did, dozens of snakes shot from his sleeves and wrapped and coiled around the Guardian's body. Growling under his breath, the behemoth then threw his arms and legs out, ripping the snakes completely apart, while Orochimaru whistled lightly, still smirking arrogantly. I will admit, your strength and durability are very formidable, however you lack a certain something that would make you a truly powerful enemy, Orochimaru noted aloud, and the Guardian merely gripped its axe tightly while rising up from the ground. Enough of your blathering on. I will not be bested by the likes of you, body snatcher, the Guardian declared as flames formed along the edge of his axe, a deep frown crossing Orochimaru as he rushed forward with surprising speed and sliced the man in half. However, Orochimaru then grinned, snakes shooting out from both halves of his body and pulling them back together. Temporarily stunned by the display, the Guardian was unable to block a quick roundhouse kick from Orochimaru, leaving him stumbling to the side and landing in a heap. You seem to be underestimating me, behemoth. I am no mere body snatcher, I am so much more, Orochimaru stated darkly while a sick, cruel grin slowly slithered across his lips. My name is Orochimaru, one of the Densetsu no Sannin, and you should never underestimate me, Orochimaru stated and then took a deep breath, his cheeks puffing out as he then leaned down and opened his mouth, sending out a massive wave of snakes slithering towards the Guardian. Growling lowly, the Guardian lunged at the snakes, its axe's edge burning a bright crimson red. Swinging the weapon into the mass of snakes, the Guardian sliced through the mass of incoming snakes for a moment, only to quickly dig its axe into the ground and brace itself against the wave of snakes. Slade then watched on as the Guardian soon reappeared, wrapped up in a mass of snakes it quickly ripped open. Lunging towards Orochimaru once more, the Guardian swung its axe at the man, only for him to twist down and knock him off of his feet. Kicking the guardian away, Slade then smirked while the guardian rolled to his knees and dug its axe into the ground to slow down. Looking up with the cracks in its mask glowing a fierce red, the guardian then got up only for Slade to lunge at him with a punch. Grunting lightly, the guardian grabbed Slade's hand and then bent it back and clenched his fist on it tightly. Slade then grunted as the guardian ripped off the glove over his hand, revealing the bony limb beneath. Looking to it for only a moment, Slade then looked back to the guardian only for the behemoth to slap him back where he impacted with the doorway he'd seen earlier. Doubling over in pain, Slade held his ribs and panted heavily, Orochimaru appearing at his side with an amused look on his face, as the guardian stood opposite of him. "Your days have long since ended, mortal, time to lie down with the rest of the bones," the guardian declared while marching towards Slade, Orochimaru merely smirking as he did. "You first." Slade growled towards the guardian, a single crack in his mask glowing a fierce red as he glared towards the massive warrior. Moving quickly, Slade flipped back and then leapt off of the doorway and over the guardian, deftly landing behind it. Turning around, the guardian then gave a surprised cry as Slade jumped up, ramming his knee into his already damaged helmet and knocking a chunk of its metal out of place, revealing an unblinking crimson red eye lay beneath it. Using its distraction to his advantage, Orochimaru then reached up and rammed the head of the guardian into the door behind him, the behemoth grunting as he did. Quickly rolling out from under the guardian as he fell, Orochimaru then flipped to his feet with a grin. Roaring out, the guardian swung his axe towards the serpentine man's legs, only for him to quickly jump over the strike, and then flipped out of the way. Landing to the side, Orochimaru then watched as Slade lunged at the guardian, and slammed his left fist into his gut, only for his eye to widen, as it didn't even seem to tickle the behemoth. Growling lightly, the guardian's axe suddenly lit with flames once more before the behemoth swung the weapon at Slade yet again. Dodging the first two swings from the guardian's axe, Slade then grunted as he managed to tear into his side with the third swing, revealing his bony ribs. Grunting and placing a hand against his wounded side, Slade then looked to the behemoth as it stood across from him. "You cannot hope to defeat pure evil," it declared while glaring at him, and Slade looked up and held a strange device towards the guardian. "Actually, I'm not such a nice guy myself," Slade growled out while hitting a button on the device, causing it to start beeping loudly. Quickly turning around to see what was going on, the guardian widened his eye upon seeing a strange device on the doorway behind him, emblazoned with Slade's own S-shaped symbol. Mere seconds later, the device exploded at point-blank range with the guardian, causing a brilliant explosion of light to flow forth from the newly opened doorway. As the light flowed outwards, they formed into dozens of almost arrow-shaped objects that flowed forth. One of the arrows quickly slammed into Slade, the man's soul eye widening as he felt something form along his bones, a brilliant white light concealing the masked madman from view. Another of the arrows, strangely enough, changed into a white raven, which flapped its wings and flew up out of the depths of hell towards the surface up above. Meanwhile, Orochimaru smirked as Slade soon reappeared out of the light, his armor and mask completely repaired. Taking in a deep breath as he did so, Slade spread out his arms and closed his eye while exhaling the same breath. "Ah, my own flesh and blood," Slade noted while looking to his left hand, then gazed over to where scorched and half-melted helmet lay. "Don't get up. I'll let myself out," Slade offered the deceased guardian mockingly, while Orochimaru chuckled to himself while walking over to stand beside of the masked madman. "Good riddance to bad rubbish. The guardian who can't even do his job right and keep people out, isn't even worthy of being called a guardian," Orochimaru noted aloud, and Slade nodded his head in agreement with the serpentine man, then knelt down and took hold of the guardian's axe. "I believe this will make for an interesting souvenir," Slade mused while flames formed along the edge of the axe, a grin working its way across Orochimaru's face as he gazed at the unique weapon. "I do concur with you, Slade-san, but I believe that you owe me something for helping you in accomplishing this little endeavor of yours," Orochimaru reminded the masked madman, and Slade leaned the enormous war axe along his shoulders, before looking back to the pale-skinned man. "Sadly, such information shall be useless so long as that demon up above has control of the world. If you want your immortality, we'll need to find some way of destroying that thing," Slade replied and caused Orochimaru to twitch slightly, before chuckling lightly to himself. "Oh, I don't believe we need to worry about that, Slade-san," Orochimaru declared while turning around and starting up the stairs, so they could return to the world up above. "After all, if little Naruto-kun and his little Karasu are still alive, then they will be more than willing to attack that thing. If one of them doesn't manage to defeat it, I'll be very surprised," Orochimaru told Slade, and the masked madman walked up the stairs behind Orochimaru with a frown on his face. You sound awfully certain those two will win against that thing. Care to explain your sudden confidence in them? Slade questioned of the Serpentine Man, and a dark chuckle echoed out from Orochimaru's throat as he grinned back at Slade. The look alone was enough to cause Slade to halt as Orochimaru came to a stop as well, his yellow snake-like eyes clearly displaying the madness so many before Slade had seen just within his eyes. Though that's simple really, little Naruto-kun has this habit of defeating anything in his way. Whether they are more powerful or not doesn't matter, he always finds a way to win in the end. And as such, I am confident that he will also find a way to defeat this Jubie up above. And once he does, our own little games with the Titans and him shall continue once more. Orochimaru replied and then started back up the stairs, Slade standing behind him for only a moment before chuckling to himself. I see, and since the Titans have the same habit as him, it's twice as likely that they will win this battle. Slade decided while following Orochimaru out of the depths of hell and back to the world up above. Jump City. Naruto stood on the top of a large building with a frown, Utagarasu landing on his shoulder soon after. Looking to the bird for a moment and wondering why it was following him, the blonde then shook his head and pulled the kusanagi from his back. Looking downward, Naruto narrowed his eyes on the Jubie as it slept below. Oh shit, what the hell did Kyuubi do? Absorb Trigon or something? Naruto wondered to himself while looking down at the enormous monster as it slept silently, clearly without a care in the world, as if it were some kind of unstoppable force. And I really have to wonder, why are all the insanely enormous demons always so arrogant? The blonde-haired teen wondered to himself silently before pointing the kusanagi towards the sleeping Jubie. Alright Kyuubi, Jubie or whatever the hell you're calling yourself. Wake up you lazy-ass bag of fur. Naruto shouted out towards the beast with a snarl across his face, a mocking grin lazily splitting both of the Jubie's mouths. Slowly, its four red eyes then slid open and looked up at the blonde-haired youth, its grin only seeming to widen as they did. Its fifth eye then opened up, Naruto twitching as he recognized the eye as the same one that was on Madara's final mask. The Jubie tilted its head soon after, gazing at him at an angle and then yawning loudly, Naruto standing against a surprising gust of wind coming from the Jubie's mouth. The beast then crossed its two frontal paws and chuckled while grinning down at the blonde. So you're back from the dead, eh ninja? Jubie commented even as its fifth eye began to glow, staring at the blonde for a moment, before an amused chuckle echoed from its throat. And I see you got my old Yin chakra from Shinigami-sama, well you were at it as well, how? Interesting. The Jubie decided while Naruto leaned the kusanagi against his shoulder with a frown, Utagarasu calling towards him loudly. Whatever, at least I don't look like something in Nico spit up. Naruto retorted with a slight smirk, and the Jubie frowned towards him, its many eyes narrowing onto him dangerously. Be glad that you amuse me Gaki, otherwise I would take great offense to such an insult. The Jubie growled out towards the blonde darkly, Naruto merely rolling his eyes and crossing his arms over his chest. Regardless of how fucking great you think you are, Jubie. Naruto growled out before turning to glare at the enormous beast furiously. No matter what happens, I won't lose to you, and I'll make certain you never harm anyone ever again. Naruto shouted at the Jubie with a glare, and it merely chuckled while looking down at him with one of its eyebrows raised slightly. Your arrogance is most amusing, yet completely unfounded runt. You may have the power of my Yang chakra, but even combining that with your own impressive reserves, would too little to match my Yin chakra and Trigon's demonic powers. The Jubie said with a sneer before grinning down at the demon raven with clear amusement. Humph, so I see that a small remnant of you did survive being sent to hell. How truly annoying, why can't you people just stay dead? Jubie questioned while tilting its head to one side, clearly bored before yawning slightly. But, in either case, that no longer matters to me, for you see I am neither Trigon nor Kyuubi. The beast stated and then grinned down at the two teens sinisterly, its eyes glowing with an eerie crimson light. I am the Jubie no Yami. And while you might have stood a chance against those who combined to form me, you two little runts are no match for my power. The Jubie declared, and Naruto glared at it before crouching down and roaring loudly, as he changed into his Jubie no Akami form, and then glared at the Jubie fiercely. I don't care who or what you think you are, I'm the Jubie no Akami, and I'm still going to take you down once and for all this time. Naruto sent out as a mental signal, Raven and the Jubie both hearing the message while the wolf roared, Utagarasu flapping its wings and flying over to Raven's shoulder. Don't forget me, love. I'm here to help as well. The demoness added as she hopped onto the Akami's back, the Jubie chuckling in its throat before falling into a full bout of laughter. Glaring at the beast as it laughed at them, the two prepared to attack, the demon Raven forming a familiar black energy over her free hand, while Naruto crouched down. However, the Jubie soon ceased its laughter and then looked at them, amusement clearly visible on its features. Such utter arrogance you ninjas possess. If the Rakuto-san in himself couldn't truly stop me at his peak, what could possibly make you believe that you too can? Especially since your own full strength only equals to a mere fraction of his full power. The Jubie demanded even as it lifted its paws, digging them into buildings on either side of Naruto and Raven, then pulled itself up onto his feet slowly. The demon Raven watched as it rose up, towering over them like a man would an ant, and mentally shivered before gripping onto the mane of fur at the back of Naruto's head. Maybe because you're weaker than you were at your peak, which gives me and Karasuhime here all the advantage we'll need to take you down. Naruto exclaimed while spreading his limbs, eyes narrowed onto the Jubie dangerously. Truant, I am not at my peak ability, but you lack the experience that is necessary to truly make use of your power in that form. While it is possible that we offset one another in equality, my experience makes every drop of my power count. Not only that, but you're not even a tenth of my overall size. You're little more than an annoyance, no an insect to a being such as me. The Jubie suddenly countered as a grin split both sets of lips on its head, then roared loudly. The sonic wave from the roar nearly pushed Naruto back, however he quickly wrapped 2 tails around the demon Raven, and then dug his other 8 tails into the ground, holding himself firmly to the ground. But if you must die for me to finally prove my point to you, Runt, then so be it. The Jubie then exclaimed while leaping off of the ground and slamming down into it, and creating a gigantic earthquake that managed to shake all of Jump City. Quickly jumping off of the building he'd been perched on, Naruto then swung all of his tails back to create a burst of wind, throwing him towards the ground below. Running towards the Jubie as soon as his paws made contact with the ground, the Jubie Nakami then glared up at the truly enormous demon. Twitching slightly at this, the Jubie then lifted its tails and sent them all stabbing towards Naruto. However, the shadow from the enormous tails allowed Naruto to steer and maneuver his way around the tails, before swinging his tails back for a quick burst of speed once more. Narrowing its eyes dangerously, the Jubie then dug its tails into the ground as a grin crawled over its features. Its many tails then began to rise out of the ground and slam towards Naruto as he twisted and turned around them. Barely managing to evade the enormous tails, Naruto then opened his mouth and gathered a fair bit of chakra within it. Kakuho! Naruto exclaimed mentally and thus fired off a salvo of miniature menacing balls towards the Jubie's face. However, the beast merely grinned as several of its tails shot forward and took the hits from the attack. However, much to Naruto's annoyance, the blasts were so tiny that they barely even managed to singe the enormous beast's fur, let alone damage it. Well, this is just great. Looks like we'll have to take this fight and get up close and personal with the Jubie, Narakuheim. Naruto noted while sliding on his paws and lunging towards the Jubie. However, one of its tails then ripped its way out of the ground, lifting up the street he'd been on top of it. Die, Runt! The Jubie exclaimed with an insane grin across its muzzled face as its other tails then lunged towards them. Naruto yelled while flipping out of the way of one of the 10 tails, as it stabbed straight through the concrete street. Widening his eyes, Naruto then cursed while twisting out of the way of the next few tails, as the street was torn apart by them. Looking around, Naruto lunged forward to escape from the tails, dodging and weaving around them, as they continued to tear the street apart. Looking back as the tails started to come closer to him, Naruto then looked forward and widened his eyes as he approached the end of the street. Love, hurry and just keep running towards that thing, I'll do the rest. The demon Raven ordered, and Naruto briefly looked worried before shaking his head. Narrowing his eyes, the black fur Takami then lunged forward, evading the Jubie's many tails once more before lunging off of the street and into the sky. Azarath, Metrian, Zinthos. The demon Raven chanted while holding out a single hand, forming a platform for Naruto to land on. Grinning back towards the demoness, Naruto then flattened his ears against his head as he landed on the platform and slid to a halt. Shaking his head, Naruto then looked back, and Demon Raven silently nodded to him. Narrowing his eyes, the Akami then lunged across the platform just as a tail came towards him. The Demon Raven quickly held out her hand, forming a rectangular step, which the black-furred Akami moved over, more steps forming along the way. Growling low in its throat at the boy's approach, the Jubie then lifted up its right paw into the sky, casting an enormous shadow over Naruto. Looking up and cursing, Naruto quickly moved out of the way, pulling all his tails forward, and then swinging them all back as one, pushing his wind chakra into them for good measure. The effect was instant. His tails created a gust of wind that propelled him out of the way in a burst of speed. Feeling his paws connect with another stare, Naruto then twisted on his paws and faced the Jubie's side. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto tried to think of something to do against it, but he wasn't sure on how to use the Izanami ability he'd used when this form was instinctually controlled. Yeah, I'd better make it a priority to learn my abilities in this form. The blonde thought to himself and then opened his mouth, forming a large sphere of chakra into it as his tails curled forward. Grinning to itself, the Jubie saw what the Akami was doing, and thus lifted one hand, just as Naruto fired an Imari towards him. Holding up his hand, the Jubie caught the Imari as if it were nothing but a baseball. Widening his eyes, Naruto then watched as the Jubie crushed the attack in his hand, and then laughed to himself. So you want to fight like a true Biju then, Runt? Well then so be it. The Jubie declared while opening one of his mouths and forming an Imari. Only Naruto's eyes bolted open as it completed the sphere of energy in a fraction of the time. Oh shit. Naruto cried out while propelling himself out of the way, Demon Raven making a quick path for them to cross on. However, the Jubie's second mouth grinned as it turned and fired the blast at the two. Muttering curses under his breath, Naruto propelled himself faster and managed to just exit the radius of the blast. Then looked on with wide eyes as it tore a long deep trench out of the city. Okay. Maybe it does deserve to be a little bit arrogant. Naruto admitted to himself, though would deny it if anyone else were to ask him about it later. Shaking his head of that thought, Naruto then turned to look at the smirking Jubie, its 5 eyes glaring down at him. Oi, what I wouldn't give to wipe that smug look off of his oversized face. The Akami added mentally before crouching down as the Jubie moved, only to twitch as it yawned loudly. Looking towards the Jubie, Naruto took a quick count of its tails, and then growled lowly as he noticed that they were all swaying behind the enormous beast lazily. He doesn't even consider me a threat. Naruto realized while mentally twitching, some of his old brash nature shining through as he hated anyone who underestimated him. No, that isn't the type of thinking I need right now. Being my old impetuous self will only get me killed here. Even when I'm playing with the kids it's because I know they can't actually hurt or kill me. But he's different. The black-furred Akami thought to himself while the Jubie cracked its neck and stretched out its massive body. Ah. It's been so long since I've experienced true freedom. Between you bitch of a mother, and that other Uzumaki bitch, I haven't been experienced true freedom like this in years. The Jubie noted another flare of fury working its way into the Akami from the insult towards his mother. Calm down Naruto. He's just baiting you. He wants you to attack him in anger, you'll be that much easier for him to kill. Naruto shouted at himself mentally while taking several long deep breaths and glaring at a smirking Jubie. Alright, think, your human form can use more jutsu, but those are too small or close range to be effective against this thing. This Akami form is faster, and has access to the heavily damaging chakra attacks of a Biju. Naruto started thinking to himself while considering his options for a moment. Now then, I have my Rinnegan, my Shiranui, Imari, Kakuho, and a few other basic attacks, but what else can I do? I mean, I know I can use 2 more abilities in this form, Izanami and Imatsu Mikabashi, but I still have no clue as to how they work. And since I have demonic chakra, well, Kyuubi's yang chakra, I should also have the sonic roar and chakra limb ability I had in my Jinchuriki forms. Naruto reasoned to himself, while looking at the Jubie, then twitched as mentally listing his abilities really wasn't helping him. Not only that but the Jubie seemed to be playing with him. Clearly not seeing him as any kind of threat. Okay, as for this fucker, it can at least fire 2 Imaris with those 2 mouths of its, has Trigun's all-seeing eyes, which I'm assuming is what that big 5th eye actually is. All the basic chakra abilities of a Biju is bigger than a fucking mountain. But its body is so big all its attacks are easily visible, and its arms are slow, the fastest thing on it is its tails. And it uses those most. Meaning I'd need to target its tails, if I could get around to its back fast enough. But it's too big for that to work. The black-furred Akami thought to himself while watching the Jubie as it stared him down as well. Mentally twitching as his options were more or less nil, the young Akami also considered his other Rinnegan abilities, thus quickly thought of the only way to truly take the thing down. Stealing his resolve, Naruto crouched down and snarled while glaring at the Jubie as it looked down at him. Think of something yet, love. The demon raven questioned, and rather than answer, Naruto lunged forward towards the Jubie. Growling lowly, Naruto then threw a paw forward, forming a hand of chakra that shot out to a building and pulled himself over to it. Grinning at this, the Jubie watched as the Akami continued with this course of action, pulling himself between the nearest buildings. Soon coming close to the Jubie, Naruto lashed out with a chakra claw to his fur and grabbed on before pulling himself over to it. Chuckling to itself, the Jubie looked down as Naruto then lunged up the side of his arm. Interesting tactic. You think your size will help you here? That I won't attack for fear of harming myself. Intelligent, but with me, ineffective runt. Jubie mused aloud while swinging his tails towards the black-furred Akami. Seeing the tails heading his way, Naruto narrowed his eyes before taking a deep breath and exhaling in a sonic roar. The roar temporarily knocked the tail back, however it quickly slipped towards him. Cursing to himself, Naruto lunged to the side as the tail came at him again and again, while lightly slicing into his own arm. However, as Naruto looked back, he mentally groaned when he saw the wounds healing just as quickly as the tail managed to make them. Narakuheim, follow my lead. I think I know something that'll hurt this oversized demon. Naruto shouted back to the demoness, causing her to raise a brow, but still got a good grip on the mane of fur at Naruto's neck. Growling to himself as she readied herself, Naruto then took a deep breath before breathing out a torrent of familiar white flames onto the Jubie's arm. Seeing this, the demon raven smirked while forming a crimson fireball into her right hand, and then threw it into the white flames, adding it to the mix, and burning into the Jubie's arm, with the flames' combined heat. As soon as the flames hit its arm, the Jubie's eyes widened in pain and it shrieked, throwing its arm up and throwing Naruto and the demon raven high up into the air. Looking down, the demoness cursed before quickly forming a circular platform for them to land on, while the Jubie flicked its arm, scowling furiously as the flames burned its flesh. Looking up to where Naruto and the demon raven were, the Jubie's eyes narrowed and its ears flattened against his head. Oh shit. Now he's really pissed. Naruto thought to himself as the Jubie let loose with an earth-shaking roar, the sonic roar sending him and the demon raven flying into the air. Growling as they flipped in the air, Naruto twisted around to right himself, while the demon raven formed another platform for them. Looking from his still-burning arm and then up to Naruto and the demon raven, the Jubie narrowed its eyes into a heated glare at the two of them. Don't look now, love, but I really don't think setting it on fire was a good idea. The demon raven noted while looking towards the clearly furious Jubie, and then watched on as it raised a paw high into the air, into the clouds above them. Watching on in shock as the paw came down towards them, Naruto quickly propelled himself with his tails and lunged out of the way. Twisting in the air, Naruto watched as the demon raven formed several platforms, the black-furred Akami jumping from platform to platform. Sliding to a halt on the final platform, Naruto turned and watched on, as the massive paw suddenly slammed into the ground, causing another earthquake to rock the entire city. Love, I don't think our friends can take too many more hits like that. Your barrier clearly wasn't designed to withstand against earthquakes. The demon raven reminded Naruto, causing the Akami to grimace before shaking his head, as the Jubie narrowed its eyes onto him dangerously. Snarling with fury in its eyes, the enormous beast suddenly spread out all 10 of its tails, and opened up both of its mouths, the white flames of Shiranui still burning into its arm. Watching the Jubie in confusion as he continued to run towards it, Naruto then felt his eyes bolt open as a tiny sphere of energy formed at the tip of each tail, and within both of its mouths before expanding outwards. Shit. Narakuheim, I need you to stay low on my back and whatever you do, don't let go or look up. Naruto ordered quickly, the demoness deciding to do as told as she laid her body flat against the enormous wolf's back, and then blinked as his 10 tails wrapped around them to form a sphere. No sooner than the sphere was formed did the Jubie suddenly grin darkly. Amari Rendon. Menacing ball barrage. The enormous beast's voice echoed out as its tail spiraled inward and fired all 12 Amaris towards Naruto and the demon raven. The spheres of energy also tore apart the city, and caused the Jubie itself to fly back from the sheer force of the attack. Gritting its teeth, the Jubie had to use its tails to anchor itself down, while Naruto spun in place. Shinra Tensei. The blonde exclaimed, forming a spherical barrier of gravity around himself and the demon raven. The shield staved off the barrage of energy blasts sent towards them by the Jubie, causing the beast to scowl, as they continued to spin and fall towards the ground. Opening up his tails on his way down, Naruto then flapped them backward and propelled himself forward, his paws touching down with a building that he quickly lunged across. Blinking her eyes open, the demon raven then looked around at the devastation that the Jubie had caused with but a single attack with white eyes. I hate to say it, love, but I think we're outsized, outmatched, and plain old outclassed here. The red-skinned demoness noted aloud, and Naruto merely grunted while keeping an eye on the Jubie, as it turned to them with an annoyed glare. Mentally growling, Naruto quickly lunged towards the enormous beast, while the demon raven continued creating pathways for the Akami to run along. Narrowing its eyes onto the Akami in the sky, the Jubie quickly raised its right arm into the air, before swinging it down towards the Akami. Twisting in the air to evade the arm, Naruto then allowed himself to fall through the sky and down towards the Jubie. Growling low in its throat, the Jubie swung its tails up towards the black-furred Akami, only for it to twist out of the way. Latching onto the tails, Naruto then ran down their length and towards the Jubie's tailbone. Twitching in annoyance, the Jubie crouched down before jumping up high into the air. The velocity of the Jubie rising into the air caused Naruto and the demon raven to fall down, unable to move as they were pressed into the Jubie's back. Landing on the ground while Naruto rose further into the air, the Jubie caused another city-shaking earthquake. Twisting out of the way of the small Akami, the Jubie then swung its tails towards Naruto once more. This time the tails managed to knock into Naruto, sending him spinning back in a roll, before the demon raven managed to form a platform, which Naruto's paws came into contact with. Growling lowly, Naruto looked towards the Jubie and propelled himself forward, towards the enormous beast. The demon raven made several pedestals for Naruto to jump from, soon reaching the Jubie, where the Akami quickly touched down on its nose and continued to move forward. Narrowing her eyes dangerously onto the Jubie, the demon raven then formed a ball of fire in her hand. She then took the chance and unleashed a torrent of flames towards the beast. The flames slammed into the Jubie's face, causing it to grunt out in annoyance, while Naruto continued running up along its arm, hoping to reach its head. Twitching in clear annoyance, the Jubie quickly threw its arm to the side, tossing Naruto and the demon raven off. Twisting in the air, Naruto managed to land on his paws and skidded back, landing in a low crouch and glaring towards the Jubie. "I'll crush you both," it declared loudly while raising its tails high up into the air, and then sending them all slamming towards the, to it at least, tiny wolf. Growling lowly, Naruto then flapped his tails for another burst of speed, evading the falling tails, before jumping off of a building, and making his way towards the Jubie. "Damn it, this sucks. Killing it like this will be all but impossible even for me, especially in under an hour. But right now I just need to get to its head for a moment, and somehow distract it from my real plan to work," Naruto explained to the demoness, and she raised a brow, but decided that didn't matter, while forming several platforms for the wolf to run along once more. Soon approaching the Jubie, the two looked up and saw its eyes blaze a brilliant crimson while glaring down at them. "Enough of these games," it declared while lashed out with a hand and catching them in one of its enormous hands. "I have endured your continued existence for long enough," the Jubie declared while reeling its arm back and then throwing the wolf and demoness away. However, before they could hit a building, Utagarasu swooped down and grabbed two of Naruto's tails, quickly beating its wings and lifting him up, only to place him and the demon raven onto the building gently. "Meddling servant to the unworthy Kami. Begging with you," the Jubie roared out while its many tails lunged forward, lashing out at Utagarasu. Flapping its wings with all of its might, the three-legged raven flew round the attacks, evading every single strike from the tails, and quickly moving into a dive. Zipping down with impressive speed, Utagarasu then opened its wings when it approached the ground and flew towards the Jubie. The beast itself frowned as its tail slammed into the ground, and yet the annoying bird somehow managed to evade harm yet again. "You must learn, the reign of you pathetic ninja has ended, and that this world now belongs to me," the Jubie roared out at Utagarasu while swinging one of his clawed hands towards the flying raven. Seeing the incoming swing ahead of time, Utagarasu flapped its wings and rose up into the air. Seeing the Jubie's incoming hand, the raven quickly flapped its wings, creating enough force to push itself out of the way of its enormous claws. Rising up into the air, Utagarasu then righted itself and flapped its wings once more, pushing its body towards the towering Jubie. Folding its wings flat onto his sides, Utagarasu then dive-bombed towards the Jubie. Growling low in its throat, Jubie opened its upper mouth and quickly began to form a sphere of energy into it. "Amari," the beast exclaimed while sending the sphere of energy flying towards the incoming Utagarasu. However, the bird quickly opened its wings and was propelled up into the air, out of the way of the attack, where it then circled above for a moment before flying into the distance, a scowl crossing the Jubie's face. However, below Utagarasu, Naruto rose back up onto his paws and shook his body for a moment. Closing his eyes and fixing several cracks and holes in his bone-like armor, the Akami then looked back towards the demon raven, who was rubbing her head with a scowl. "Can we not do that again?" the demoness pleaded, and Naruto merely grunted before lunging forward, off of the building, and she sighed. "I'll take that as a no," she grumbled out while forming numerous black platforms for the Akami to run along towards the Jubie. However, upon spotting them, the Jubie grit its teeth and lashed out with one of its hands again. Flapping his tails back, Naruto was propelled forward, out of the way of the enormous hand, and continued towards the Jubie. Narrowing its eyes onto the Akami, the Jubie then sent its numerous tails towards Naruto. Grunting as the Jubie tried this tactic yet again, Naruto crouched down for a moment before rocketing forward. Propelling itself by pushing wind chakra into his paws, the blonde idly noticed a trail of silver light was flowing off of his paws. I've really got to figure out what all I can do in this form sometime. Naruto thought to himself while narrowly evading the first tail, and then narrowed his eyes as he saw one heading straight for him. Lunging forward, Naruto bit into the tip of the tail, and the Jubie growled while throwing him up high into the air. Propelling himself with his tails as he did, Naruto shot down towards the Jubie, only for one of his tails to lunge at him. Moving to the side just in time to miss it, Naruto then ran along the length of the tail, and then yelped as another tail hit him from the side. Grinning darkly, the Jubie then shot out another tail, which then slammed into Naruto, sending him flying towards the ground. Cursing under her breath, the demon raven formed a protective dome of black energy around them, even as they both crashed into the ground, Itagarasukoing from above in some vain attempt to rouse Naruto. Elsewhere in Jump City, Jinx and the others watched Naruto slam into the ground in the distance from behind the protective barrier created by the Shikucho. Clenching her fists, Jinx then turned around and faced the others. "What the hell are we doing just standing around here?" she demanded, and Seymour scratched the side of his face with a confused look spread across his face. Keeping safe like Temp told us." The one-eyed teen questioned, and Jinx huffed while Nightwing frowned. "I see what she means. Why are we all just standing back and letting them do all the work for us, when we should be fighting with them?" Nightwing stated while Jinx nodded her head to the former boy wonder with a glare. "Exactly. What are we, a bunch of fucking kids or something? You Titans have collectively kicked more ass than my team combined, yet you're all just sitting around here while Temp and the demon chick fight that monstrosity. And you guys aren't any better. You fought Darkseid and Hades himself, yet here you are with the rest of us, when we should be over there, helping our friend to take that thing down once and for all." Jinx shouted at them, and BP rubbed the back of his neck while looking towards the enormous beast wearily. "I know what you mean, Dudette, but we're all like the size of amoebas compared to that thing. What could we do against it?" BB reminded, and Jinx crossed her arms and gave the green-furred teen an annoyed glare. "Are you saying you can't change into something big enough to at the very least hurt that thing? Like, oh I don't know, a T-Rex and bite its tail, or have Starfire drop you on it while you turn into a Brachiosaurus?" Jinx demanded, and BB blinked before slowly shaking his head, as he knew of a few animals that might be able to at least damage it slightly. "Right, then what about the rest of us? What are our excuses for sitting back here and letting our leader and friend get pounded on by that thing?" Jinx questioned of the rest of Tartarus, and Gizmo muttered something before glaring at the girl. "Boy, we get it already. And if I'm going to die, I guess I'd prefer to do it helping Temp out against a giant monster. Well, at least it's better than dying in what will most likely be a slow painful death after he's gone, or even being eaten by some random monster that thing conjures up to take over the world." Gizmo mused with a shrug of his shoulders, and Donnie snickered before giving a thumb up to the Pinket. "No way am I about to let Sensei die before he can finish teaching me, so you can count me in as well," Donnie said, and the rest of Tartarus reluctantly agreed, Nightwing looking to his own team as they did. "Well, what do you say, guys? We going to let them take all the glory for themselves or what?" Nightwing asked the other Titans with a smirk, and Cyborg scoffed while crossing his arms over his chest. "Fat chance of that happening," he declared while Starfire looked to her sister and quickly grabbed the girl into a bone-breaking hug. "Please sister, if you will go into battle with the enormous monster of badness, then I shall do so also," Starfire said while hugging her dark-haired older sister, Blackfire merely rolling her eyes before pushing her off. "I thought we had to talk about all the hugging," Blackfire reminded the girl, and Starfire grinned nervously, before Dr. Fate shook his head with a chuckle. "Well, I believe I speak for us all when I say that if you all shall face that thing, then so shall we also face it," Dr. Fate agreed while Etrigan snorted and looked at them all with a deep frown across his face. "This mission is naught but a fool's errand, I fear. Take heart in the moment, for our end surely draws near," Etrigan grumbled in verse, Cher rolling her eyes before deciding to translate for the demon. "What I think Etrigan is trying to say is not to think of this as our last stand, live in the moment, and remember that no matter what happens, we've done our best to save this world," Cher explained, and Batman silently nodded his head, Nightwing, Jinx, and Dr. Fate looking to one another, before Jinx grabbed Naruto's Shikujo and yanked it out of the ground. "I hope you all know that it is highly likely that none of us will be walking away from this fight," Ravager chose to remind the group, only for Jinx and Nightwing to look to one another. That's a distinct possibility, but the same could be said if we stay here. Standing around we're assured death, at least we'll have a chance if we help Axe take that thing down. Nightwing replied while crossing his arms over his chest, Ravager shaking her head before pulling her katana from her back. Well then, if you're all going to walk head first into battle and almost certain doom, I might as well tag along for the ride. The white-haired girl decided while the young raven looked at them all as if they were insane. How can you all talk so casually about this? None of you will be coming back if you fight him. He's stronger than my father was, and he was already invincible. The young raven reminded, and the group looked amongst themselves for a moment before Batman walked over to the girl and knelt down. You're right, we probably are going to walk to our deaths. But it's not because we're underestimating the threat he poses to us. No. It's because we can't just sit here and do nothing while others fight on. Hero, villain, mercenary, or even thief. I found that they all have one thing in common. It isn't that they have powers, it isn't that they have gadgets, and it isn't that they have partners or friends. Batman started to explain, and a confused look crossed over the girl's face. Then, what's the same? She asked, and Batman stood up, looking down at her for only a moment before closing his eyes. Resolve. The resolve to constantly keep coming back after every defeat. The resolve to keep on saving lives, even when we're hurting or have lost those close to us. The resolve to never give up, no matter what the circumstances. The resolve to see whatever we do through even to the bitter end. Batman replied, and the young raven looked to the Dark Knight with wide eyes as he then turned around and walked to the others. That is what we have in common, that is what makes us the same. Batman told the girl flatly and then turned back to the others. Alright, let's go, we have a story to see through to the end. Batman stated, and Wayla snickered into her hands before looking at the Dark Knight with a grin. Oh, you really have no idea just how correct that statement is, she said, mostly to herself, and then laughed loudly while Jinx shook her head in exasperation. Taking a quick breath to solidify her resolve, the pink-haired girl then looked around to the large group that was to stand together against the Jubie. Alright then let's teach that oversized demon it can't mess with our friend and get away with it. Jinx declared even as the Shikujo seemed to react to the string of beads that Jinx was wearing, glowing with a faint white light. Kid, let's get over there and fast. Jinx ordered, and Kid Wicket nodded his head silently, before pulling his cloak up and over them all, causing them to vanish into the shadows. Get up, Naruto. The demon raven pleads while shaking Naruto, the black furred Akami lying on his side, unconscious and unmoving, while the Jubie glared down at him and the red-skinned demoness. Now we finally end this front. The Jubie declared while moving its arms to the sides, and dragging itself closer to the two. Naruto slowly opened his eyes slowly and then growling as he glared up at the Jubie. However, looking up, the wolf then saw the enormous beast's center eye begin to spin, recreating a familiar shape. Kitsunibi. It exclaimed with a grin, sending a hail of purple flames flowing towards them, when Naruto grinned slightly to himself, and managed to get to his feet. Sh Shiranui. The blonde exclaimed loudly as he pushed his chakra forward in a wave, the familiar white flames forming along the way. The white flames flowed forth like a torrent, quickly consuming the Jubie's foxfire, and leaving it to gape in shock. As the fires of Shiranui consumed the foxfire, Utagarasu swooped down and began to beat its wings, feeding the flames, and causing them to rise up and flow onto the Jubie. Screeching in pain, the Jubie stumbled back as the flames of Shiranui burned into its arms, searing its flesh. What again? What is this fire? The beast demanded while the flames burned into both of its arms, before suddenly grunting aloud as several small explosions impacted against the side of its face. Turning its center eye to the side, it then saw the group of heroes standing against it and sneered. So all the vermin finally come out of the woodworks. Good, now I can have the pleasure of killing you all at once. The Jubie declared. However, Slade lunged from off of a building, and spun the Guardian's war axe in his hands before roaring out as he threw the weapon towards the Jubie, embedding it deeply into his center eye. Seeing her chance, Jinx pulled her arms inward and then spread them out, sending a wave of pink hex energy along the ground. The wave of energy then flowed under the Jubie, causing the road to give way and it to fall onto his side. Shaer then flew forward, her wings beating against the wind as she activated her mace. Stopping in midair, she then twisted around and threw the weapon with a roaring, sending it flying into the war axe in the Jubie's eye, and digging it even deeper into the closed orb. Shrieking out in pain, the Jubie thrashed about while clawing at its face to try and stop the pain. As the Jubie thrashed, his tail slammed into anything and everything around them, Kid Wicket quickly forming out of the shadows to grab Jinx, then vanishing and grabbing Shaer out of the way as well. As it did, Starfire and Blackfire flew past the Jubie, over the ivory flames, and landed next to Naruto. As soon as she saw them, the demon raven shook her head to clear the shock of them actually standing against the great demon, and glared at Starfire and Blackfire. "What are you human idiots doing? He told you all to stay behind the barrier and keep safe." She reminded the two Tamaranians angrily, and Blackfire rolled her eyes before giving the demoness a smirk. "Yeah, but we're his friends." Blackfire reminded as she got beside of Naruto, Starfire doing the same, both sisters lifting up the enormous wolf. "And as his friends, we cannot allow him to stand against this most evil being of 10 tails without us by his side as well." Starfire said with a nod of her head, then flew with Blackfire over the flames of Shiranui still flowing along the ground. Why are they doing this? What are they getting out of putting their lives on the line like this? Why not just stay back and stay where it's safe? I don't understand why they do this. The demon raven thought to herself, wondering why this didn't make any sense to her, since she had done something similar to prevent the titans from being harmed before. Meanwhile, Kid Flash was running along the ground under the Jubie, easily moving around its thrashing tails. Growling lowly, the Jubie lifted an arm in an attempt to right itself, grabbing hold of a building, and using it as leverage. Seeing this, Kid Flash lunged forward and quickly ran in a circle under the arm and around the building. Soon enough the speedster created a miniature tornado that lifted the limb up into the air. Soon running out from under the Jubie and releasing the tornado that lifted it up, thus causing the beast's limb to fall off of the building, the Jubie falling to the ground face forward when he did so. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification, and also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.